Oh, hello everybody. Sorry, I was just reading a book from my favorite franchise, Kyle XY. I actually forgot that I owned this book. I literally own a Kyle XY book. Anyways, this is referring to an April Fool's Day joke video that I did a few days ago. So if you saw that video, you know what that's from. Anywho, I'm actually not here to talk about Kyle XY or my actual favorite franchise, Star Trek, but to talk about another franchise that I really love, Star Wars, and its most recent animated series entry, Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 2. I had a few of you asking me if I was going to do episode-by-episode reviews of The Bad Batch Season 2, and I did watch every episode as it came out, but I sort of felt like the algorithm didn't really do kindly to Season 1 of The Bad Batch, so I figured that I would probably wait a little bit and just do a whole season review, which is what you are currently getting now. And I have to say, I kind of, if you remember my review of Season 1 of The Bad Batch, I liked Season 1 of The Bad Batch, but I wasn't head over heels for it. I thought elements of it, especially in its sort of depiction of the shift from the Republic into the Empire and our sort of group of clones within that, was super fascinating, especially when we got into sort of the overarching like world building elements of it. But the actual episode by episode stories I thought were kind of okay. They felt like frivolous sort of fun adventures that almost didn't really always fit into the larger narrative of the Republic falling into the Empire. They just sort of felt like, yeah, fun little kid shows. Let's go and like catch the Rancor for Jabba the Hutt and things like that. And I thought it was cute, and I definitely didn't hate it, but it felt a little bit more superfluous than I frankly wanted it to be. And when it did hit those sort of big overarching episode moments, I thought it was great, and the rest I was like, yeah, this is all fine. That, I think, has shifted heavily for me in this season 2 of The Bad Batch, because while I do think there was definitely a balance between sort of big heavy world building stuff, again relating to the shift of the Republic into the Empire in its initial years, as well as the sort of like more one-off filler episodes that some people may call them, for me, I actually thought that the balance was much better, number one, and number two, the filler episodes actually, for me, still felt more pertinent to showcasing this unique era of the Star Wars universe in a way that I feel like Season 1 wasn't. I felt like a lot of the one-off episodes of Season 1 were kind of just, again, frivolous fun, let's go catch the Rancor, it'll be a fun, wacky time. Whereas this season, I feel like even the filler episodes drew a better picture of what makes this era of Star Wars unique and makes this show unique for setting it there at this time and being able to do these sort of one-off filler episodes in those times. There was a big discourse online about, you know, The Bad Batch having too many filler episodes for people who are watching it, but for me, I kind of disagree, and I want to talk a little bit about why. But before I get there, I think I need to talk about the actual episodes that people really did seem to have a lot more love for, and those are the overarching world-building episodes. And I have to say, those for me were also the highlight of this season, and they were really, really great. The sense of dread and doom that kind of like pervaded certain episodes of the season. I'm thinking of particularly episode 3 was sort of the big first standout one of these, of just seeing this sort of further and further shift into the ways of the Republic into the more fascistic authoritarian empire was so, I think, perfectly captured. I think, like I said, episode 3 was an early standout where we got to see Crosshair, who has now become like full little fascist boy, fall into with Commander Cody from the movies, and it was so great to see Commander Cody going after a group of separatists who were still sort of holding out after the fall of the Republic. And I loved this episode because it showcased that the separatists, to a degree, had an understandable grievance because they saw the bureaucratic inaction of the Republic. The big problem that I always had with the separatists in the Clone Wars TV show, as well as the movies especially so, was that they were always sort of portrayed as sort of villainous mustache-twirling villains, just very clearly like evil. You know, especially the movies did this. The TV show did a little bit better with it. But you know, as we see, the Republic does fall into a fascistic empire. And while certainly the Separatists had many problems of their own, I'm not saying they were great, there was an understandable sort of grievance at the New Republic's bureaucratic inaction falling further and further and into authoritarianism that they were reacting to and against. And that episode, I thought, really showcased that and put it on the moral complexity of being a soldier within that shift in understanding that. You know, I love seeing this perspective from the clones who sort of been so indoctrinated into believing, yeah, we are here for the Republic, we fight for a Republic, that's what they were literally born and bred for. And now seeing the shift into how they're more viewed as even more inhuman, even more less of people than they were under the Republic because they're seen as clones, it's starting to showcase them sort of having this internal struggle within them, and showcasing them having to confront the Separatists, being like, maybe they actually had a point, an understandable point, sort of makes them wrestle with that too. And then we would get episodes further on in the season where we see the Senate starting to dehumanize the Republic more and more and more, the clones more and more and more, to the point we have like a senator trying to fight for clones' rights, and even the clones sort of being like, no, we were so indoctrinated into this, we don't deserve rights, like, we're just soldiers, we just do our jobs, but then also facing traumas and mental health harms. Like, all of this stuff is really an amazing look at, you know, fascist ideology and how it continually dehumanizes and makes the people who sort of fall into fascism and sort of really are brainwashed and also start to sometimes realize that they are suffering as well under these systems, but still sometimes upholding it too because they are so indoctrinated. It's a discussion about how everyone under fascism, except for quite literally the people at the top, and even them to a degree too, are all suffering under these systems. And I think utilizing the clones, who are people who have literally been dehumanized within the Republic before it, but have been so indoctrinated by it, I thought was a brilliant look at that. And so the episodes where we got to see fighting for clones' rights and them sort of having this push and pull around it too was great. And then we also got the very famous Senate scene that was like two-parter episode that I think people loved, especially, where we had, I forget his name, but the Imperial dude who was sort of fighting to like, we need to, you know, stop using the clones, we need to fight for more individual army stuff, and he sort of does stuff behind the scenes that gets him in trouble, and it's almost taken as a moment of the Senate's like, yeah, we can fight back against this, we can beat him, but then the Emperor shows up and is like, oh, it was just that guy's fault. And again, it showcases because of how fascism works, it fails to, it wants, and it doesn't fail to, it deliberately obfuscates systemic injustices and harm in order to say it's the problem of an individual and not the system that individual was sort of working within and was incentivized to do these actions for, and then he can be the scapegoated, and then fascism can ultimately still win the day and get to do what it wants. I thought it was such a very nuanced look at how well manipulative, like, if you have an authoritarian in charge who's actually competent and how to work those systems, can very easily be manipulative in those senses. And playing Palpatine, who's always been sort of seen as the like 3D chess player, is a great way to show that. In real life, most authoritarians are kind of silly and dumb and make stupid mistakes themselves. But if we're going to actually show like the dangers of a really effective authoritarian state under Palpatine, this was a really great way to showcase that. And I thought all of that was excellent. And then we bring it over into our sort of Bad Batch of clones, our sort of main characters, and I love to see them struggling with existing within these big systems of this empire, like it feeling like it's a like it's just this big thing that they can't even really fight, but they want to because it's harmful. Like Echo going to like, I want to be part of the growing rebellion cell to fight it, and I love Echo going off with that. But then having the rest of the clones sort of being, we're just trying to live our lives, and we don't really want to. We can't really fight this whole system. We wish to. We want to say screw it, but we also understand that it feels very oppressive, and how do we eke out our own life for ourselves as a family of people that have been vilified, our chosen family of people that have been vilified? How do we eke out our own life in this world that does not wish us to even survive anymore? And it showcases the two kind of pulls of like, yeah, we want to say fucking fight the system, and many people do want to sort of become those like rebel leaders, as Echo does. But then there are people just like, I just want to live my life, and they should be able to make that choice. Sadly, they can't because they live in fascism, but they want to. And it's that constant struggle and push and pull that I think the show really articulated well. And we get to see that in the final episodes of the season where, you know, our clone troopers sort of find this like planet that they can actually go and live upon. I thought all of that was just so well depicted and showcasing that struggle within the show. But this brings me to the filler aspect of this season that people were complaining about, and I think why it works much more for me, and I understand if it doesn't for other people, but I think the filler episodes showcase what it feels like to be an everyday person, these clones, the Bad Batch clones, dealing with interpersonal relationships when you are living within huge systems like this. I think particularly of Omega, wrestling with Echo going off to join the rebellion, or what will probably grow into be a cell of the rebellion, or the nascent rebellion, I should say, and her sort of being like, well, he left us, and he sort of left our family. How could he do that? And I think that's an understandable reaction. It's like, we want to just be a family. Why would he leave me? And it's like, well, he understands that there's a larger fight, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't love you, but he also feels a need to do this because he is fighting this authoritarian state. But it also is very hurtful to a kid who just wants to have her family be with her. Understandably so. And it showcased those struggles, I think, really, really well. And also you get like understandable like emotional reckoning with Tech, who is very clearly coded as neurodivergent within the series. And I love the episodes with him sort of and Omega being like, you're emotionless, how can you be so emotionless, Tech? And Tech is like, no, I feel emotions, I just don't show it in the same way. And it's still wrestling with those same emotional things that are going on. Then you have Crosshair in his own individual episode, sort of being the little incel fascist boy, also starting to realize how he is harmed here too, and getting to see it on a very personal level as well. So I thought emotionally those were all great, but then there were even filler episodes that were very clearly filler, but showcased the deterioration into competitive and capitalistic and fascistic mindsets within the Empire, even in microcosm. So there's that one episode where the clones get stranded on that one planet, and they run across this sort of like, I forget what it was, the mining colony of kids, and there was sort of the boss at the top who's like, well, you can all earn food today if you become my top earner, and he sort of sets the kids off against each other, and it's very clearly a micro form of capitalism that he's sort of built. Like, oh, we set the workers in competition with each other, I pay them like nothing, food, quite literally, but pay them nothing, and sort of make them fight with each other to earn just a little bit more scraps that I toss them while I just eat at the top. It is quite literally a microcosm of sort of a capitalist mindset, or a very similar one, and showcasing that those things build up in the in microcosm within an empire like this. In small ways, utilizing the same structure that the Empire does, I think was a really smart way to like subtly put in very political themes into ostensibly a kid show, because that episode literally ends with a workers' rebellion. Like, the episode probably would not state this as such, but if you pay attention to that episode, it's literally like them being like, hey, workers should unionize, or workers should sort of seize the means of production for themselves against the big boss man and eat the rich, or literally throw them into lava, is in this case. So like, that's a very political, like very left-leaning message within a kid's show like this, that, you know, it wouldn't go and be like, let's quote Marx, but is very much that very idea, and showcasing you know, those mindsets when you are living in a capitalistic and fascistic world. So for me, I think Star Wars: The Bad Batch this season was surprisingly excellent. It may not have been at the level of like Star Wars Andor in terms of its let's go punch Nazis like feeling that you get from it, but it's certainly a show that is, I think, taking full advantage of its unique place in Star Wars timing, because with Star Wars Andor you have like the beginnings of the rebellion. People have lived in fascism for a while, and they're starting to really understand how it's working and the oppressive nature of it, whereas here you're just starting to get the little inklings of people understanding how this system is going to be functioning and harming more and more and more people. So it's a subtle difference between like where Andor is and where this show is, and I think it really showcases it well in a way that is, I think, deeply smart for a kid's show. So for me, Star Wars Bad Batch was excellent, and this was a great season of the show. I'd love to hear all your thoughts on it, though, down in the comments below. Did you like this season of the Bad Batch? I'd love to hear you all. I'm going to go back to reading my book, Kyle XY book, of course, and I wish you all well. I hope you all live long and prosper.